Admiral HFY stood before the massive view screen on his flagship, watching the stars streak past as his fleet moved through hyperspace. Behind him, 2,000 warships followed in perfect formation, the largest invasion force the Corvani hegemony had ever assembled. Today would be a good day for conquest. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. No one dared disturb the admiral when he was thinking about victory. HFY's forearms crossed behind his back as he studied the tactical display. The human colony worlds of the Terran frontier lay ahead. 12 planets with a combined population of 800 million humans. Soon, they would all bow to Corvani rule. "Sir," called Lieutenant Vex from the communication station, "we are receiving the final intelligence reports from our scouts." HFY turned his massive frame toward the young officer. His scaled face showed no emotion, but inside he felt excited. "Read the report. The human fleet consists of 150 ships total. Their largest vessel is half the size of our smallest destroyer. They have no allies in the region. Our victory is certain. Perfect. The humans would break like glass against Corvani steel." HFY had conquered 47 worlds in his career. He had never lost a single battle. The humans would be number 40-8.3 star systems away. Captain Sarah Chung sat in her command chair aboard the Earth defense ship Resilient. The bridge around her buzzed with quiet activity. Her officers knew their jobs well. They had been preparing for this day for months. "Ma'am," said Commander Torres from his position at the tactical station. Long-range sensors confirmed the Corvani fleet size. 2,000 ships, just as intelligence predicted. Sarah nodded calmly. The odds were terrible. 13 enemy ships for every human vessel. Any normal military commander would be ordering evacuation right now. But Sarah Chen was not normal. She had studied at the Earth Military Academy, where they taught lessons the aliens had never learned. "Begin Protocol Phantom," she ordered. The bridge crew moved with practiced precision. Protocol Phantom was the most classified operation in human military history. Only the senior officers knew what it really meant. The rest of the crew just followed orders and trusted their commanders. "All ships are acknowledging the protocol activation," reported Lieutenant Kim from communications. Phase 1 is beginning across the entire fleet. On her personal display, Sarah watched as her fleet began to scatter. To outside observers, it would look like panic. Human ships breaking formation and running in random directions. Some ships sent out distress signals. Others broadcast evacuation orders. The whole human fleet appeared to be falling apart in fear. But Sarah knew better. Every ship was moving to precise coordinates. Every panic message was carefully written beforehand. Every apparent mistake was planned months ago by the best military minds Earth had ever produced. The Corvani had never fought humans before. They thought they understood warfare. They believed in overwhelming force, direct attacks, and simple tactics. They had conquered dozens of species using the same methods every time. The aliens had no idea what they were about to face. Sarah's communication officer received a message from the other human fleet commanders. Admiral Park from the heavy cruiser Thunder Bay, Admiral Rodriguez from the destroyer group, Wolfpack, Admiral Zhang from the stealth frigates. All reported ready for the next phase. "The pieces are moving into position," Sarah said to her first officer, Commander Torres. "Now we wait for them to take the bait." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other species watched the approaching battle with interest. In the crystal halls of the vegan collective, diplomats placed bets on how long the humans would last. The smart money said 6 hours. The optimists gave them 2 days. On the trade world of Nexus Station, arms dealers prepared to buy salvage rights from the Corvani fleet. Human technology was primitive, but some components might be useful. The dealers expected good prices for scrap metal in the academic towers of the Ashanti Union. Military historians prepared to write another chapter about Corvani victories. The humans would be footnote in galactic military history. Another species that learned too late that the galaxy belonged to the strong, but in the secure communication rooms of Earth's government, a different conversation was taking place. The Secretary of Defense spoke with the President about humanity's real capabilities. "Are you certain about this plan?" the President asked. "The risks are enormous." "Ma'am, we've run the simulations thousands of times," the Secretary replied. "The Corvani are powerful, but they're predictable. They follow patterns. They think like conquerors, not like survivors. That's their weakness." The President looked at the star charts showing human colony worlds. So many lives depended on this plan working. "And if we're wrong? Then we fight anyway. Humans don't surrender easy, ma'am. The Corvani are about to learn that." Back on the Corvani flagship, Admiral HFY reviewed the intercepted human communications. Panic, fear, confusion. Everything he expected from an inferior species facing superior force. The humans were already broken, and the battle hadn't even started. "How long until we reach the first human world?" he asked. 16 hours, sir," replied the navigation officer. HFY allowed himself a small smile. 16 hours until another glorious victory. His name would be remembered in Corvani history as the conqueror who brought the human worlds into the hegemony. But the Admiral didn't know about the lessons humans learned in their long, bloody history. He had never heard of Sun Tzu, who wrote that the best victory was won without fighting. He didn't understand Clausewitz, who taught that war was politics by other means. The Corvani had never met a species that turned weakness into strength. Captain Sarah Chun checked her chronometer. 15 hours and 47 minutes until the Corvani fleet reached human space. Plenty of time for the next phase of Protocol Phantom to begin. "Send the signal to all ships," she ordered. "Begin Phase 2. Let them think they're hunting us while we study them." The human fleet disappeared into the darkness between stars, leaving only ghost signals and false trails. The real battle was about to begin, but the Corvani would never see it coming. They expected to fight ships and weapons. Instead, they would face something far more dangerous. They would face human intelligence, human cunning, and 50,000 years of human survival instinct. The aliens were about to learn why humanity had conquered the deadliest planet in known space, and why they had survived everything their own world could throw at them. The hunt was beginning. But the Corvani didn't realize they were the prey. The Corvani fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of human territory. Admiral HFY watched the main display as his ships formed their battle formation. 2,000 warships arranged in perfect rows, a sight that had terrified dozens of species across the galaxy. "Begin scanning for human forces," HFY ordered. The sensor operators worked quickly at their stations. Within minutes, they had results. "Sir, we're detecting multiple human transmissions across the system. They appear to be in complete disorder." HFY felt satisfaction wash over him. "Put the communications on the main speakers." The bridge filled with panicked human voices. Ship captains calling for evacuation orders. Military commanders arguing about retreat routes. Civilians begging for protection. The humans sounded exactly like every other species the Corvani had conquered. Afraid and broken. "Admiral, this is Captain Williams of the Earthship Boston. We're taking heavy damage from unknown attackers. Request immediate assistance. All civilian ships, evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Central Command, we've lost contact with the outer colonies. The enemy is everywhere." HFY's officers laughed at the human panic. Lieutenant Vex shook his head. "They're already defeated, and we haven't fired a shot." But the Admiral didn't know that 500 light years away, The panicked Captain Williams was actually sitting calmly in a recording studio on Earth. The desperate civilian voices were actors reading from carefully written scripts. Every transmission was fake, designed to make the Corvani believe exactly what they wanted to hear. In space, the real human ships moved like ghosts through the darkness. Captain Sarah Chun's Resilient hung silent in the shadow of an asteroid, all systems running on minimum power. Around her, the human fleet had scattered to dozens of hiding places throughout the star system. "Ma'am," whispered Commander Torres, "the Corvani are taking the bait perfectly. They're moving toward the fake distress signals, just like we predicted." Sarah nodded. "Phase 3 is working. Are the ghost probes in position?" "Yes, ma'am. We've deployed over 10,000 of them. They're smaller than grains of sand and completely invisible to Corvani sensors. We're getting detailed scans of every enemy ship." The ghost probes were humanity's secret weapon. Microscopic surveillance devices that could slip through any known defense system. Each probe attached itself to a Corvani ship and began recording everything. Ship designs, weapon capabilities, crew conversations, even the personal files of enemy officers. Within hours, the humans knew more about the Corvani fleet than the Corvani knew about themselves. "Interesting," said Sarah, reading the probe reports on her personal screen. "Admiral Zexai has never lost a battle. He's conquered 47 worlds using the same tactics every time. He believes his own reputation makes him invincible." "What about the crew?" Torres asked. "They worship him. But look at this data from the other ships. The Corvani Alliance is made up of 12 different species, and they don't really trust each other. The vassal species are forced to fight, but they'd rather be anywhere else." Sarah smiled. Human military doctrine had always emphasized knowing your enemy better than they knew themselves. The Corvani thought in terms of ships and weapons. Humans thought in terms of psychology and motivation. On the Corvani flagship, Admiral Zexai studied the tactical display. His scouts reported finding several groups of fleeing human ships, but every time they moved to attack, the humans disappeared. It was frustrating, but not unexpected. Weak species often tried to run instead of fighting with honor. "Sir," reported the communications officer, "we're intercepting more human transmissions. Some of their ships are trying to surrender." "Put it on speakers," Zexai ordered. "This is Captain Johnson of the merchant vessel New Hope. We surrender. Please don't destroy us. We have families aboard. Corvani Fleet, this is Admiral Mitchell of the Human Defense Force. We cannot match your strength. We're prepared to discuss terms for our surrender." Zexai felt even more satisfied. The humans were breaking faster than expected. Ignore the surrender offers for now. Let them suffer a little longer. Fear makes the final victory sweeter. But Captain Johnson and Admiral Mitchell didn't exist. The surrender offers were more fake transmissions, designed to make the Corvani overconfident. While the aliens celebrated their easy victory, human technicians worked around the clock to analyze the data from the ghost probes. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Kim reported to Captain Chun, "we've identified the command structure of the entire enemy fleet. Admiral Zexai commands from the flagship Dominator. He has 12 species commanders under him, but 3 of them hate each other because of ancient territorial disputes." "Perfect," Sarah said. "What about their communication protocols?" "We've cracked their encryption codes. We can send messages that will appear to come from any Corvani ship. We can make Admiral Zexai think his own allies are betraying him." This was the kind of warfare humans had perfected over thousands of years. Not just ship against ship, but mind against mind. While the Corvani celebrated their superiority, the humans were learning how to turn that strength into weakness. Commander Torres pulled up another report. "Ma'am, look at this psychological profile on Admiral Zexai. He's proud, arrogant, and has never faced an enemy that didn't fight exactly like he expected. His biggest fear is losing face in front of his subordinates. And his subordinates? They're terrified of disappointing him. The whole Kovani military structure depends on rigid hierarchy and absolute obedience. If we can make them question their orders or their leadership, the whole system could collapse. Sarah nodded. Begin Phase 4. Start feeding them false intelligence about human capabilities. Make it subtle at first. We want them to discover the information themselves, so they'll believe it. Across the human fleet, communication specialists began their work. They created fake human military databases and left them where Kovani hackers could find them. The files contained carefully crafted information about human weapons, tactics, and military history. Most importantly, they included detailed records of humanity's wars on Earth. The Kovani would learn about World War II, where humans killed over 50 million of their own species. They would read about Vietnam, where a small country held off a superpower for years. They would discover that humans had actually built weapons capable of destroying their own planet. The aliens would learn that humanity was not just another peaceful species waiting to be conquered. They were a species that had spent millennia learning how to kill, and they had gotten very good at it. Ma'am, Torres reported, the false databases are in place. Kovani intelligence officers are already accessing them. They think they're reading stolen human secrets. Sarah smiled. The Kovani were about to get their first real lesson about humanity, and they wouldn't like what they learned. Admiral Zexhighs was having trouble sleeping. For the past 3 days, his intelligence officers had been bringing him disturbing reports about human military capabilities. The information came from captured human databases, so it had to be accurate. But what he was learning made no sense. According to the files, humans had fought a war called World War II, where they killed over 50 million of their own species in just 6 years. Another conflict called Vietnam showed a small human nation fighting a superpower for decades, using tactics the Kovani had never heard of. Guerrilla warfare, asymmetric strategy, fighting dirty. Most disturbing of all were the weapons. The humans had actually built devices capable of destroying their entire planet. They called them nuclear weapons and had pointed thousands of them at their own cities for something called mutually assured destruction. Sir, said Lieutenant Vex, entering the Admiral's private quarters, the intelligence team has finished analyzing the human military files. You're not going to like their report. Zexhigh looked up from his desk, where human battle footage played on repeat. Humans fighting in jungles, in cities, in frozen wastelands. They never seemed to give up, even when defeat was certain. Tell me, the humans appear to have spent their entire evolutionary history at war, not just with other species, but with each other. They've developed tactics specifically for fighting against superior numbers and better technology. Impossible. No species fights wars like that and survives. Vex pulled up a holographic display showing human military doctrine. Sir, they have a concept called acceptable losses. In some battles, they consider 70 to 80% casualties to be worth the strategic value. Our military considers 5% losses to be catastrophic. Zexhigh felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. What else? They have detailed manuals on psychological warfare, sir, making enemies fear them more than death itself. They call it shock and awe and hearts and minds. But most disturbing is something they call total war. When humans really want to destroy an enemy, they don't just attack military targets. They attack everything. The Admiral stood and walked to his window, looking out at his magnificent fleet. 2,000 ships that had conquered the galaxy. But now he was learning about an enemy that might not care about being conquered. Meanwhile, on the human ship Resilient, Captain Sarah Chen was watching the results of their psychological operation with satisfaction. The false databases were working perfectly. Every piece of intelligence the Corvani discovered was carefully designed to make them think twice about fighting humans. "Ma'am," reported Commander Torres, "our probes are detecting increased stress levels throughout the Corvani fleet. Officers are requesting transfers. Some of the vassal species are reporting technical problems that require them to return home. And Admiral HFY? He's been reviewing human military history for 18 hours straight. His medical officers are concerned about his health." Sarah nodded. "Phase 5 is working better than expected. What about the fake communications between Corvani species?" Lieutenant Kim answered from her station. "The manufactured disputes are spreading, ma'am. We've convinced the Thurian species that the Corvani are planning to sacrifice them in the first wave. The Corvani think the Thurians are planning to retreat without orders. Both groups are watching each other instead of looking for us." This was exactly what human military strategists had hoped for. The Corvani alliance was strong when all 12 species worked together. But humans had studied their history and found the cracks. Ancient territorial disputes, species that had been conquered and forced to serve, jealousies between commanders. "Ma'am," Torres continued, "the Corvani are also trying to understand our fleet movements. They keep finding our ships in impossible locations, then losing them again. It's making them paranoid." Sarah smiled. The human ships weren't actually disappearing. They were using advanced stealth technology, combined with tactics learned from Earth's greatest military minds. Appear weak when you are strong. Strike where the enemy doesn't expect. Make them fight shadows while you study their weaknesses. Begin Phase 6, Sarah ordered. Time to show them what human weapons can really do. Across the system, human ships began moving toward predetermined targets. Not Corvani ships, but asteroids. Uninhabited rocks floating in space. Perfect targets for a demonstration. On the Corvani flagship, sensors detected the human ships breaking stealth. Admiral HFY rushed to the bridge, expecting finally to see the enemy fleet in battle formation. Instead, he watched in horror as human weapons turned 3 large asteroids into glowing dust. "Analysis," he demanded. "Sir," the weapons officer said in a shaking voice. "Those asteroids were each over 2 kilometers wide. The humans destroyed them completely in under 30 seconds. The energy readings suggest kinetic weapons of incredible power." "Kinetic weapons?" "They're not using energy beams or plasma charges, sir. They're throwing objects at incredible speeds. The impact force is enormous." HFY stared at the tactical display where the asteroids used to be. His species used sophisticated energy weapons that could disable enemy ships while keeping them mostly intact for capture. The humans were using weapons designed to completely destroy their targets. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted. "We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it on screen." Captain Sarah Chun appeared on the display, sitting calmly in her command chair. Behind her, human officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. "Admiral HFY," Sarah said in perfect Corvani. "I am Captain Chung of the Terran Defense Force. You have just witnessed what we do to rocks. I'm sure you can imagine what we do to enemies." HFY felt his blood turn cold. The humans spoke his language perfectly, which meant they had been studying Corvani culture for years. And her calm tone suggested she wasn't afraid of his fleet at all. "We know about your 47 victories," Sarah continued. "We've studied your tactics, your strategies, your methods. We know you prefer to capture ships intact and force species to surrender quickly. That's not how humans fight, Admiral." The transmission showed human ships moving through space with deadly precision. Not the random panic movements the Corvani had seen before, but calculated positioning that suggested careful planning. "You're outnumbered 13 to 1, HFY said, trying to sound confident. Sarah's expression didn't change. Admiral, we come from a planet that spent 65 million years trying to kill us. We survived ice ages, supervolcanoes, asteroid impacts, and our own weapons. Being outnumbered is just Tuesday for us. The transmission ended, leaving the Kovani bridge in silence. Sir, Lieutenant Vex whispered, "What are your orders?" For the first time in his career, Admiral HFY didn't have an answer. He was facing an enemy that didn't follow the rules. An enemy that seemed to welcome impossible odds. An enemy that built weapons to destroy, not capture. "Continue monitoring their movements," he said finally, "and prepare casualty estimates for a full assault." But privately, HFY was beginning to wonder if victory against the humans would feel exactly like defeat. The whispers started in the lower decks of the Corvani ships and spread upward like poison. Stories about the humans that grew more terrifying with each telling. Species that had fought for thousands of years without winning or losing. Soldiers who kept fighting even after being fatally wounded. A civilization that had turned their entire planet into a weapon. Commander Vex of the Corvani destroyer Vengeance sat in his quarters, reading intercepted human military manuals. The translation software was working overtime, but the concepts were clear enough to make his scales itch with nervousness. Acceptable. Casualty rates for strategic victory, 70 to 80%. Urban warfare doctrine. Expect 90% infrastructure. Destruction. Nuclear warfare protocol. Total annihilation of enemy civilization preferred. Vex had been a military officer for 20 years. He had fought in 6 campaigns across the galaxy, but he had never encountered military thinking like this. The humans wrote about war like other species wrote about engineering problems. Cold, calculated, and focused on complete destruction of their enemies. A knock on his door interrupted his reading. "Enter." Lieutenant Corv stepped inside, looking pale. "Sir, I've been analyzing human battle footage from their planetary wars. You need to see this." The holographic display showed scenes from something called the Battle of Stalingrad. Human soldiers fighting in the ruins of their own city for months. Buildings reduced to rubble. Both sides taking enormous casualties. And the humans never surrendered. "This battle lasted over 5 months, Corv explained. The humans lost over 1 million soldiers, but they kept fighting. They fought for every building, every room, every hallway." "What did they win?" Vex asked. "Nothing, sir. Just the right to keep fighting. And they considered it a great victory." Vex closed the files and stood up. "Send a message to ship's medical. I want a full psychological evaluation of the crew. And increase security patrols. The men are getting nervous." But Vex wasn't telling his lieutenant the whole truth. He was nervous too. The humans fought like machines, but they thought like something far more dangerous. They thought like a species that had nothing left to lose. On the flagship, Admiral HFY was dealing with a crisis he had never faced before. His own officers were questioning his orders. "Sir," said Commander Helix of the 2nd Battle Group, "my captains are requesting clarification on our mission objectives. The men want to know what our exit strategy is if the humans prove more difficult than expected." "Exit strategy?" HFY's forearms crossed in irritation. "We are the Corvani hegemony. We don't retreat from inferior species." "With respect, sir, are they inferior?" "The intelligence reports suggest they have weapons capable of destroying planets. And their military doctrine appears to be based on something they call mutually assured destruction." HFY had read those reports too. The humans had actually built thousands of weapons capable of ending their own civilization, then pointed them at each other for decades. It was madness, but it was also terrifying. What did you do with an enemy that was willing to destroy itself to defeat you. Sir, Lieutenant Vex interrupted. We're receiving priority communications from several of our allied species. Put them through. The holographic display showed 3 alien commanders. Commander Silex of the Thurian fleet, Admiral Corinth of the Vegan squadrons, and General Threx of the Mentari forces. Admiral HFY Silex began. My ships are reporting critical system failures. We need to return to base for repairs. My forces are experiencing similar technical difficulties, Corinth added quickly. Our weapon systems are showing dangerous power fluctuations. General Threx nodded agreement. The Mentari ships require immediate maintenance. We cannot participate in combat operations until our engineers complete full diagnostics. HFY stared at the 3 commanders. They were lying, and everyone knew it. His allied forces were abandoning the mission. Your timing is suspicious. Admiral, Silex replied carefully. Our species have served the hegemony faithfully for centuries. But we've also studied the intelligence reports about human military capabilities. This may not be the kind of victory we're used to winning. After the transmission ended, HFY stood alone on his bridge. His fleet of 2,000 ships was already down to 1,500. Word of human capabilities was spreading through the alien alliance faster than he could contain it. Sir, reported the communications officer, we're intercepting human military broadcasts again. More panic signals? No, sir. These appear to be internal military communications about combat preparations. The bridge speakers filled with human voices, but these weren't the panicked civilians from before. These were professional soldiers discussing tactics with calm efficiency. Thunder Bay, this is Wolfpack Leader. Confirm your missile tubes are loaded with kinetic penetrators. Confirmed, Wolfpack. Full spread of planet crackers ready for deployment. All stealth frigates begin hunter-killer patterns. Target enemy command ships for decapitation strikes. Copy that. Boarding parties are standing by with close combat protocols. HFY felt something cold spreading through his chest. The humans weren't panicking anymore. They sounded like they were looking forward to the battle. Sir, the intelligence officer called out. We've intercepted more human military files. These contain detailed analysis of Corvani fleet formations and tactical doctrine. Show me. The display filled with accurate diagrams of Corvani ships, complete with weapon specifications and armor weaknesses. The humans had somehow obtained classified military information about every ship in his fleet. But worse than the intelligence leak was the human commentary attached to the files. Corvani tactics rely on overwhelming force against psychologically broken enemies. Recommend targeting command structure to trigger cascade leadership failure. Enemy alliance composed of unwilling vassal species. Exploit historical grievances to fragment fleet unity. Corvani military doctrine emphasizes honor and direct confrontation. Use asymmetric warfare to negate numerical advantage. Admiral, Lieutenant Vex said quietly, they've been studying us the whole time. Everything we thought we knew about this mission was exactly what they wanted us to think. HFY finished. On his personal display, HFY read the final human intelligence assessment. Corvani fleet represents typical expansion-era military thinking, focused on conquest rather than survival warfare. Recommends psychological destabilization followed by tactical demonstration of superior lethality. Enemy likely to withdraw when faced with unacceptable casualty projections. For the first time in his military career, Admiral HFY realized he might be the inferior commander. The humans had been playing a completely different game from the beginning. While he was planning a conquest, they were planning his defeat. Sir, the communications officer announced, we're receiving another transmission from the human fleet. Put it through. Captain Sarah Chun appeared on screen again, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her stood other human officers, all wearing expressions of calm confidence. "Admiral HFY," Sarah said. "We've been monitoring your fleet communications. We know about your allied forces withdrawing. We know about the concerns among your officers. We know you're beginning to understand what you're really facing." HFY said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. "We want to offer you a choice," Sarah continued. "You can proceed with your attack and discover what happens when humans really fight. Or you can withdraw with honor and tell your superiors that the human worlds aren't worth the cost of conquest." "And if I choose to attack?" Sarah's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "Then you'll learn why we're the species that survived when our own planet tried to kill us for 65 million years. And Admiral, that education will be very expensive." The transmission ended, leaving HFY staring at empty space where the human captain had been dot around him. His bridge crew waited for orders. But for the first time in 47 victories, Admiral HFY wasn't sure what those orders should be. Admiral HFY stood alone in his command chamber, staring at the tactical display that showed his dwindling fleet. In the past 6 hours, another 300 ships had found reasons to withdraw. Engine failures, supply shortages, urgent recalls from home governments. His officers weren't even bothering to hide their relief at the excuses. The Great Corvani invasion force that had started with 2,000 ships now numbered less than 1,000. And those remaining crews were terrified of an enemy they had never actually fought. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. HFY expected another withdrawal request, but instead saw the face of Admiral Corinth, the vegan commander who had already retreated. "HFY," Corinth said carefully, "I wanted you to know that our intelligence services have been analyzing human military history independently. What we found concerns us greatly. Explain. The humans have never lost a war they were determined to win. They fought conflicts lasting decades. They've rebuilt from total destruction multiple times. Most disturbing, they seem to become more dangerous when cornered." HFY said nothing, waiting. There are records of human conflicts where they chose to destroy their own cities rather than surrender them. They call it scorched earth tactics. HFY, these aren't just warriors. They're survivors. The transmission ended, leaving HFY with his thoughts and his fears. On the human ship Resilient, Captain Sarah Chun was reviewing the final phase reports with her senior officers. The psychological warfare campaign had exceeded all expectations. "Ma'am," Commander Torres reported, "Colony fleet strength is now down to 860 ships. More are withdrawing every hour. What about Admiral HFY himself? Our intelligence probes suggest he's under enormous pressure from his remaining commanders. Several have directly questioned his orders for the first time in their careers." Sarah nodded. "And the final phase?" Lieutenant Kim answered from communications. "Ready to deploy, ma'am. We've prepared the most comprehensive cultural warfare package in human military history." Sarah looked out at the stars where the Corvani fleet waited, paralyzed by doubt and fear. Soon they would face the final lesson about fighting humans. Not about human weapons or human tactics, but about human nature itself. "Begin transmission to all Corvani ships," Sarah ordered. "Full broadcast, all frequencies." The communication went out across space, reaching every Corvani vessel simultaneously. But this wasn't a message from Sarah Chun or any military officer. This was something far more powerful. The transmission showed Earth itself. Not from space, but from the surface. Humans living their daily lives in cities built on the ruins of older cities. Children playing in parks where ancient battlefields once existed. Families having dinner in homes constructed from materials recycled after wars. A narrator spoke in perfect Corvani. "This is Earth. The human homeworld. Every city you see has been destroyed and rebuilt at least once. Every family you see has ancestors who survived wars, plagues, natural disasters, and the collapse of civilizations. The footage showed human archaeological sites, layers of history stacked on top of each other. Stone Age settlements, Bronze Age cities, industrial complexes, all buried beneath modern human civilization. Humans have been fighting for survival for 3 million years. They have faced extinction events, ice ages, supervolcanoes, and asteroid impacts. They have survived everything their planet could do to kill them. And they have survived everything they could do to kill each other. The transmission switched to scenes from human schools, where children learned about their history. Wars, disasters, and destruction, taught not as tragedies, but as lessons about persistence and adaptation. When humans fight, they don't fight for conquest. They fight for survival. And they have never stopped fighting for 3 million years. On the Corvani flagship, Admiral HFY watched the transmission with growing horror. The humans weren't just another species with military technology. They were a species that had evolved to survive anything. The final part of the transmission was the most terrifying. It showed human deep space installations, weapon platforms hidden throughout their solar system, defense networks that could turn their entire star system into a kill zone. Admiral HFY, the narrator continued, "You are facing a species that has spent its entire evolutionary history preparing for this moment. We have planned for invasion, conquest, and extinction. We have contingencies for every possible threat, including threats we haven't met yet." The transmission ended with a simple statement. "We offer you one choice. Leave with honor, or stay and discover why we're still alive when everything else on our planet died." The bridge of the Corvani flagship fell silent. Around HFY, his officers stared at the display showing human defensive positions. Weapons pointed not just at the Corvani fleet, but at space itself. "Sir," Lieutenant Vex said quietly, requesting permission to speak freely. HFY nodded, not trusting his voice. "Sir, I've served with you for 10 years. I followed you through 40 battles. But this isn't a battle we can win. Even if we destroy every human ship, even if we conquer every human world, we'll lose most of our fleet doing it. And for what? To rule over a species that will never stop fighting us?" Other officers began to speak up. Commander Yelix of the 2nd Battle Group stepped forward. "Sir, my tactical analysis suggests that even total victory would cost us 60% casualties minimum. The hegemony cannot sustain those losses." The weapons officer added his voice. "Admiral, the humans have weapons designed specifically for ship-to-ship combat. They don't want to capture our vessels. They want to destroy them completely." HFY looked around his bridge at faces he had known for years. Officers who had followed him across the galaxy, who had trusted his judgment in dozens of campaigns. Now they were asking him to do something he had never done before. "You're asking me to retreat," he said. "No, sir," Vex replied carefully. "We're asking you to choose victory over defeat." "I don't understand." Commander Yelix explained. "Sir, we came here to expand Corvani territory and influence. But conquering the humans would cost us more than we'd gain. However, if we withdraw now, we can tell the hegemony that the humans offered us trade agreements and tribute payments that are worth more than conquest." HFY stared at his officers. They were offering him a way to turn retreat into victory, to save face while avoiding a battle that would devastate his fleet. "And the humans will agree to this?" "They already have, sir." Captain Chun transmitted the offer an hour ago. Trade rights, technology sharing, and what they call mutual defense agreements. We leave human space alone, and they become our allies instead of our enemies. For 47 campaigns, Admiral HFY had believed that victory meant conquest. Now he was learning that sometimes victory meant knowing when not to fight. "Send a message to Captain Chun," he ordered finally. "Tell her the Corvani hegemony accepts her terms." As his fleet began to turn away from human space, Zexai received one final transmission from the human captain. "Admiral," Sarah Chun said, "you've made a wise choice. In human culture, we have a saying, the greatest victory is one achieved without fighting. Today, you've won the most important battle of your career by choosing not to fight it." Later, as the Corvani fleet jumped to hyperspace, Zexai sat in his quarters writing his report to the Hegemony Council. How to explain that he had encountered a species too dangerous to conquer, too valuable to destroy, and too intelligent to underestimate. In the end, he wrote simply, "The humans are not like other species. They do not fight to conquer. They fight to survive. And they have been fighting for 3 million years. Recommendation: ally with them immediately." Across the galaxy, word spread quickly about the encounter. Other species that had planned to test human defenses quietly canceled their missions. The reputation of human military capabilities grew with each telling of the story. But on Earth, in the quiet offices of the Defense Department, Sarah Chun filed her own report. Mission accomplished. Enemy fleet withdrawn without casualties on either side. Human space remained secure through superior strategy and psychological warfare. The greatest battle in human history had been won without firing a shot. And that, Sarah thought, was the most human victory of all. In the vast darkness of space, the human fleet maintained its silent watch, ready for the next challenge, the next threat, the next test of human survival. Because that's what humans did. They survived, they adapted, and they never stopped preparing for whatever came next. The galaxy was learning that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology, or their ships, or their tactics. It was their refusal to ever give up, no matter the odds.